Welcome, you're watching Develop with WP. In today's video, we're going to start the last and final shortcode that we're going to be building for this series. The main point of this shortcode is going to be to show you the power that the attributes have that a user can use to input when building a shortcode. What we're going to do is we're going to allow the user to input a whole bunch more attributes, and then we're going to use those attributes to dynamically control how or what we display within the shortcode using WP query. So we've used WP query before, but we haven't used it in such a dynamic way that allows the user to have as much control over the final output from the shortcode. So without further ado, let's get started. Similar to the last videos, the last two shortcode videos, I've kind of got our starting off point already set here. If you saw the first video, you'll recognize that we're taking in some attributes and we use the shortcode as to preset those attributes. And in this particular example, this is going to be our most advanced shortcode we're going to create in this series. And you can see we already have a lot more attributes than we've ever had in any of our other shortcode videos. So if you're completely clueless about what's going on just right here, you're probably not ready for this video and you should go watch one of the other ones. But if you have been following along, then you should be ready to go with this next part. So in this video, we need to create an actual query, and we're going to use WP query to make this happen. What we want to do is we want to query for any jobs in a certain location. And so we're going to be searching for within our jobs posts, and we're also going to be searching within the locations taxonomy using WP query. I've mentioned WP query before. This video is not about WP query, but we're going to be using it. So to get this jump started, I'm going to paste in a bunch of code here. Definitely pause and get caught up, but let's walk through what's going on here. All right, once you have all this in place, what we're going to need to do is go over what's happening. So we're first saying we're setting our arguments of what we want to query, and then we're using WP query and passing those arguments in. And this is how you do it. You create a name, give it a name, equals new WP query, and you pass in those arguments. These arguments can be a lot of stuff, and I've showed you this page before. Let's go look at that. If you look at WP query, you'll see all the parameters. There's author parameters, category parameters, search parameters. I mean, this thing just goes on and on and on about all the stuff you can search. So in our example, we're saying we want to view all posts that are in the job post type. We only want to look at the ones that are published. No found rows. What this is going to be is if you do not need pagination, you can turn this to false or true so that it doesn't count the rows, because you don't need to know how many rows. If you're not doing pagination, you don't need to know how many rows you need. So this is a performance thing. You can see here that we have this set dynamically, and the reason we have this set dynamically is because with this paginated option here, we're going to allow the user to tell us whether or not they want this shortcode to have pagination or not. Do they just want to show the most recent 5, or do they want to have pagination to show all of them? So that's what that one is. The post per page, this is going to limit how many posts show up. If they have pagination off and they set this to 5, then they'll only ever see 5. If they have pagination on and they set this to 5, then each page will have 5 posts, etc., etc. And so we're using the count, which we have set to a default. Paged. So we need to add this in. We're not going to touch on it right now, but go ahead and make sure you add this in. We're going to be using this later on based on whether or not this is for pagination, and so we'll get to that in a different video, but we're going to allow pagination. So this is just one of the things that you have to do, and we'll cover it more in detail later. Then the next part is what's called a tax query. So again, we don't just want to show all the job posts. we want to show only ones based on a certain location, and we're going to allow the user to pass that location in. So we need to do what's called a tax query, and a tax query is a multi-dimensional array setup. So it takes an array of more arrays, hence the multi-dimensional array part. And the reason it does this is because tax query allows you to not just say, hey, I want to search in this taxonomy. It allows you to make pretty complex queries and do like and or operator searches. So you can be like, I want to look for posts that are in this taxonomy and this taxonomy or this taxonomy term. So you can get pretty dynamic. In our circumstance, we really only need one extra array. We're only searching one taxonomy. In that taxonomy, where we're telling it here is location, we're telling it that we want to search for the field and then the term we're looking for. And again, because we're letting the user determine this, we're allowing them to pass in this attribute. So hopefully just right here, this is the whole point of this first video and why I wanted to show you this shortcode. Because this right here shows you a perfect example of how powerful a shortcode can be. You are essentially allowing the user to use these attributes when it creates the shortcode to pass in information that's going to dynamically change the output of this shortcode. This shortcode will put out vastly different things depending on what you pass it. So for example, let's see what that looks like. If I var dump this so we can see what we're getting. If we go to our page, so if I've started a new page and I've got our new plugin in here. So jobs by location is the name of our shortcode. Hopefully you remember that. But right here, whatever name you name your shortcode right here is what you're going to use over here. So I have that put in here, and I also have a location of West Virginia. So if I update this and I go and view it, you can see I get a WP object. And I have, just this post. So actually, let's clean it up a little bit. Let's go and add get posts to it. This just makes it easier to read. Let's refresh. That didn't work. Maybe if I put an S. There we go. So we see we have an array of one object. And if we were to go look in the dashboard, you would see in job listings locations that West Virginia has one post. But if I were to go and edit this to just say Virginia and update it and then view it, you'd see I got an array of 5 objects, which makes sense because if you go look at the locations, there's 11 actual jobs in Virginia, but because I have the default for count set to 5, we'll only ever get 5. Okay, so that's kind of one of the key things there. So that is kind of the hidden secret to this shortcode, I believe. You can see the power of these dynamic attributes and how we're setting those up. And then we're going to go ahead and do a loop here and actually output these into a usable shortcode, because as of right now we're just var dumping the information. But the real secret to this shortcode again is the fact that we're using these attributes to allow them to dynamically control what is getting displayed. And you could see a certain circumstance here where you could make this even more dynamic to where they could even customize and look for even more complicated stuff. Hopefully what the goal of this video is hopefully that you can see from this example how you could use something similar to this in a project that you're working on. So I think that's all we're going to cover in this video. In the next video we're actually going to go ahead and set up the loop and display the data here. And then in the third video we'll actually do the set up the pagination.
Crank it up.